Hey there guys, welcome back to ChaosNova Story Marathon with myself, Knux V1, and today we're going to be concluding Picking Up Trash, which is Chapter 1 of Taking Flight, a book that is very much still in the works, won't be out for a little while yet, but we'd love to show you the version that we've got so far, and this is the thrilling conclusion. And of course, as always, if you'd like to read along, you can go over to chaosnova.co.uk. And there's a section there for reading samples, and you can follow along. There's loads of stuff there. There's a salvage mission, there's space junk, there's Seeker Chapter 2, and some other bits and pieces. And if you don't fancy like reading, we've put them all into, all the stories that we've read so far are in a handy playlist that you can find in the link below, or in the description below. So, let's do this! Part 3. The smell of burnt skin and clothing helped him get a grip of reality and gather focus. Corey crawled towards one of the small alleyways off of the main street with his rifle clasped tightly in his hand. He tumbled into the shadow of the passageway and made his best attempt to overcome the pain. He checked how many magazines remained in his pocket. 1, 2. A bout harsh of coughing muffled the swear words in his throat. Corey placed the butt of his rifle in the dirt and pushed himself up. He started a tortured run back into the street, emptying an entire magazine as he went. He glanced back at his prior position and saw the building crumble into a pile of debris. A blinding cloud of dust and sand erupted from its epicenter. Corey raised his hand to cover his face. Nevertheless, he still ended up with a mouthful of dry dirt. He spat and reloaded. After an attempt at getting his bearings, he made his way towards where he believed the ship to be. Trouble was still stalking down the street. He joined small groups of locals where he could, letting them do the shooting while he progressed towards the ship. As the dust settled, Corey hurried to find something to hide behind. Peering out from his new cover, he'd realised he'd run too far. The bank was about 30 steps behind him. "Motherfucker!" he cried to himself. An energy weapon blast hit his arm and he tumbled backwards. He clenched his teeth and his eyes began watering up. His fingers were contracting uncontrollably and smoke rose from his sleeve. His rifle met the ground with a quiet thud. Corey followed with a louder one. Eventually Trouble got to what was left of the bank and made his way through the ruins. He saw a couple of reclaimers winching the bank safe into the hold. He kept his distance and edged forward quietly. When he got within earshot, he set up his rifle and took out the 2 reclaimers he could see. Released from their hold, the safe tumbled down the ramp. Trouble shouted to Corey, "Hey pal, if we're leaving, now's the time!" He slung his rifle over his shoulder and went to check the safe. The reclaimers had opened it with their own tools. His inspection was interrupted by shots fired in his direction. He took cover and fired back. Whoever had been shooting at him went down, and Trouble used the break in the fight to dig through the safe and stuff his rucksack with cash. Corey's eyes shot open. He screamed in pain and lurched for his weapon. He strained as he pulled himself to his feet and charged for the bank. He had to keep low. The remaining reclaimers were still firing at him. He was breathing heavily and bleeding all over the place. "Going for the command!" Trouble disappeared into the ship. Corey nodded quietly to himself and used his rifle to hold himself up, stumbling towards the bank's aid box. "Bandages, wipes, where's the good stuff?" He noticed one of the bank raiding reclaimers stirring in the corner. He reached across to his arm as if nursing a wound. There was definitely enough blood around him. A flicker of movement drew Corey's attention. He flinched, but it was too late. The thin blade sliced through his coattail with ease and plunged into flesh. Corey followed it with the sharp jab of a Medibot injector. Waves of slight euphoria and renewed strength flooded his body. With a shudder, Corey's world came into focus again. He watched his assailant charge towards him. His hands gripped his rifle as he brought it up to aim. He fired 3 calculated shots. The reclaimer flew past Corey to end up a lifeless heap behind him. "Hey buddy!" Corey barely recognised Trouble's voice through the ship's intercom. "Get up here and run some fire control!" Without the time to patch himself up properly, he pulled the med box away from the wall and started towards the ramp. As Corey headed up into the ship, he too noticed the cracked safe and took a moment to stuff his pants and coat to the brim. He made his way through the cargo bay and sealed the huge door behind him. Trouble ran a quick scan over the controls and lit up the engines. It took some work to pry the wreckage from the rubble. At least one engine blew and another one overloaded in the process. Corey tumbled into the command centre, stepping over a body. He was about to land in the co-pilot's seat, but was able to stop himself at the last moment. He reached around to his backside, closed his eyes, inhaled sharply, and yanked the blade out. He eased into the seat and started warming up the lasers. The console emitted a buzzing, and a row of warning lights flashed as Corey tried to key in commands. "Drop that engine! It's just dead weight now!" "Drop that engine?" Corey blinked, caught off guard by his confidence to make such a call. There was a soft thud from outside. Trouble made an odd noise, drawing Corey's attention. He pointed at his monitor. "Landed on his fucking head! Talk about unlucky!" Corey turned back to the console and tried to gain access to the ship's weapons. Trouble was checking the flight control's functionality. The reclaimers left on the ground began firing up at their escaping vessel. Warning messages popped up all over, and the dim red glow of the emergency lighting flooded their faces. Trouble struggled with the controls, barely able to steer away from the danger, and made his break for Atmo. "What the heck did they do to this thing?" Corey shouted as he tried to lay down some fire. "Lasers still only a quarter charged?" As he reached for the controls to switch between weapons, another explosion rocked the ship and threw them from their seats. It was quickly becoming clear that they couldn't afford to take much more damage. Corey scrambled back to his seat, finding the missile system already active. When he fired, a warning he couldn't decipher popped up, but he could hear the missiles hitting something outside. Frustrated, he turned to Trouble. "I should fly, you should gun. We can argue the finer points later." He managed to fire another missile, making a small crater near the bar's remains. Trouble stabilised the controls and swapped seats with Corey. "Careful, it tilts to the left pretty bad." Corey took the helm and began sealing off sections of the ship, dumping another destroyed engine. Trouble settled into the weapons console and managed to get a positive response from the system. Corey stabilised the ship and finalised the launch procedures. He started mumbling vague pleas that the heap would hold together. A lot of panelling from the nose and lower deck, along with most of the landing gear, tore away in their ascent. Grinding through the final layers of the atmosphere cost them some more external components. Then, silence. Corey realised he'd been holding his breath. He leaned back with a sigh as Tucker 9 became a small dot on the nav console. Trouble lifted his hat and wiped his forehead in disbelief. They remained at their consoles, prepared, just in case something else went wrong. Once it was clear they weren't being followed, Trouble decided to tour the ship. He was going to secure any unsafe areas and look for former occupants. Corey was working on sealing the engine bay so he could go and assess the damage. He found the emergency override and sealed off the less damaged engines. Despite lacking in language skills, he was able to work through the interface basics. To his delight, Trouble found the ship was empty. It was in pretty bad shape though. None of the previous owners had been willing to give this scrap heap up without a fight, and it showed. There were bullet holes and bloodstains throughout the entire vessel. What he found unnerving was the lack of reclaimer equipment on board. His prior experience told him that they didn't usually steal a ship to do one-time jobs with, but he could only see Arabian decor and the original owner's belongings. Also, these reclaimers seemed rather underwhelming compared to those he'd encountered before. No evidence of their usual abilities, mass capture techniques, tactical superiority. Nothing. Pondering over his discoveries, Trouble returned to the command centre. "Trouble Van Ringarten." He took his seat and considered his next sentence. "I'm a former soldier, and you are?" Corey held onto the controls as he looked up. "Corey. Just Corey. I'm an engineer, I guess. Pleased to meet you." He turned back to the navigation screen, absent-minded, and unlit smoke hanging from his lips. He tapped a few buttons and his lips eased into a smirk. "The navcom works. Barely. We won't crash into anything and we might just make it to a safe transit point. We should be fine for now." Corey grabbed a length of disconnected wiring and used it to tie the steering to the seat. Unsure of the contraption, he maintained a steady grip. "We've got some bad leaks on the port side, that's what's making this tilt. I'll need some tools to repair it." He hesitated and let go of the controls. The ship was still off balance, but he adjusted the wires accordingly. Aside from a little irregular tug, the ship maintained its course. Fixed! He was quite proud of himself. Corey reached for the med box and took out a pack of burn gel and another Medibot injector before passing the box over to Trouble. He then relaxed back, closed his eyes and waited for the treatments to take effect. Need to check on those engines, he muttered to himself. That's a right din. Corey slowly opened his eyes, pulled himself up and stumbled towards the door. Trouble shouted after him, Hold up! Where are we headed? We need to get rid of this scrap heap. Corey paused and reached for his lighter. Navcom puts nearest accepting port in our chaos. That doesn't sound right though. He lit the roll up hanging from his mouth. Might be best if you look into it. I've got an idea on how we can keep those engines running. The ship was eerie, almost lifeless. Were it not for the horrific noises coming from the engine bay, it could have easily been taken for a ghost ship. The lights in the engine room were mostly busted. Corey found the engineering locker at the entrance. He found a small torch and illuminated the wrecked machinery. Well, he rubbed his forehead. This looks like shit. One of the engines sat in a pool of oil that was growing with every second. Corey was sure that this was the source of their imbalance problem. He set about looking for a way to seal up the leak. After a brief inspection, he found a ruptured pipe. He returned to the locker for some metal tape and patched the leak as best he could. He stuck around while the pressure was building up, keeping a cautious eye on his men job. It held for now, and the ship's thrust balanced out. Corey made his way back to command. He slumped into his chair and took a hold of the controls. We should land somewhere soon. My fix won't last long. Trouble shifted his feet around on the console, his gaze fixed on the space display on the monitors. Course set to Arc 04. Transit active in about 2 kiloseconds. Corey set his eyes on the display as well. It was going to be a long ride. I hope you enjoyed that. That was great fun. Yeah, if you want to check out more reading samples, head over to ChaosNova.co.uk. We should have a few more up soon. Videos at least. And yeah, thanks for watching. It's been a blast. See you soon.